Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So it was a beautiful day here in Kentucky. Welcome to the Hillbilly Think Tank with Spencer Keck. It's one of those beautiful days that just makes you, man, amazed and happy to be alive. For someone who's been through child abuse as a kid under my stepdad that my mom married when she took me down to Texas for a bit with my little brother Kelly. And I only escaped it after moving from Kentucky, Texas, Arkansas, Montana, Florida, Jamaica during the years that she remarried, back and forth to all these states for many years. But at age 18, I took my last beating in the name of Proverbs 13, as my stepdad liked to say that the Bible was telling, me to be beaten. At 18, I decided, hey, that was enough. And I reunited with my papa and mama, that's my mom's parents, in Kentucky, and then went to live with my dad for a bit in central Kentucky. And I really decided that I needed to do something with my life that had to be magnificent for me. So I joined the Navy in the hospital corps, and that got me to be able to go to college. I went to college in Nashville, went back in the military, ended up actually getting a couple of combat deployments under my belt in the military. Was in the first Gulf War, and I was actually deployed with the Marines when the attack happened. That brought down the Twin Towers and the Pentagon attack. That really, of course, changed my life forever. America's heroes were called on, and we lived up to the call. I'm just amazed, though, that after over 20 years, from 1990 to 2014 of serving, I survived. Unfortunately, during that time, my youngest brother lost his leg and hand, and we were, man, as close as anybody can ever be. You know, um, Only person I'm about that close to, as I was to my brother, because we lived through the heck of child abuse. Um, my wife is that close to me, and my surviving brother, he and I are haunted to this day over losing our middle brother. I'm the oldest, and my youngest brother is the surviving brother. And we have a younger sister. But the three of us boys served the nation, survived combat, just as our dad survived combat, just as his dad survived World War II, serving under MacArthur as his JAG officer. I'm just amazed at the fact that I'm still here. Why me? That's a question I often ask myself, and I think, of course, many combat vets. That's our often, often that is our question to ourselves. Why me? Why did I survive when others I served with did not? You know. So, just again, today was one of those days. It was beautiful. It was sunny. My puppies were frisky and happy with delight and a beautiful day, which just made me even happier watching them scamper and romp in the yard. And I had to think, man, how has this nation gotten to the point where we can't just be delighted to live in a nation with so many opportunities to give people opportunities if we so wish, to share in this nation's abundance, if we so wish to make it happen. And I'm looking back, from when I joined the Navy in 1990, man, I've seen so many changes. Many of them were for the better, and some were not in this nation. It's better to me that more people have had a chance to live up to the ideal of pursuing happiness, life, and liberty in America. What that Declaration of Independence hoped for us and dreamed for us when we broke away from the King of England. But in the 90s, started seeing a lot of advances for folks. More folks were brought in to the fold, given this opportunity to advance that other people hadn't given them before. But also noticed some really silly things started happening. It started becoming really popular to tell people that they couldn't call each other hun or honey. I served in the Navy, and if you called someone hun or honey, it started becoming, oh, that is sexual harassment. And this is the political correctness that started in the 90s that started really turning people off from progressive thought. Before this, being progressive meant you really believe that everyone should have opportunity. That if you work a 40-hour work week, or as much as you physically and possibly can, as much as your company will allow you to work, then you should get pay that will allow you to live a life to where you can feed your family, buy them clothes. And we also started introducing this idea that, hey, maybe it'd be really good if we realized that healthcare is a right for all people, not just the wealthy and powerful, not just the folks in DC who will have healthcare for life, even if they only serve 2 years. 2 years in the House of Representatives, they get healthcare for life. In the military, to get healthcare for life for you and for your family, or you and your wife for sure, you have to serve 20 years. Now, of course, injured veterans, we get the promise that if we're 50% or more disabled, all of our health care will be paid for, except for dental. You got to be 100% disabled to get free dental for your life. But that's a lot of giving up, a lot of sacrifice. Yeah. Why don't vets deserve that? But at the same time, that we were realizing we need to provide more opportunities for people who didn't have in the past. Now, all of a sudden, we were told things like calling someone honey or hun was sexual harassment. Now, I remember serving in Florida, and I was talking to another colleague, female sailor. She's like, wait, where I come from, we call everybody honey or hun. Doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, boy, or girl. We're a sweet, polite culture. Everyone is honey or hun. I'm like, you know what? I agree. That's how it is in Kentucky. If I call someone that, I'm giving them extreme respect and sweetness and kindness. We're the kind of folks who wave at everybody as we drive by. If one car passes another, we wave. We say, hey, how you doing? Welcome. I honor the fact that you're driving down my roads and living a happy life and taking care of yourself. Might not even know, most of the time I don't even know the folks I'm waving at, but we just acknowledge each other with a kindness gesture. You have a right to be here. Bless you. Now, you don't get that everywhere. You don't get that in other places in the nation. Maybe there are some places in the nation where if you call someone hun, you are being misogynistic or, flirting when what isn't wanted, but not in Kentucky. So why people got tired of things like this in the 90s, where you couldn't say things that were just in where you lived, common sign of respect. Now, things like the N word, calling someone the C word. Yeah, this is absolutely nasty. And not doing that doesn't have anything to do with being politically correct. It has to do with you got some good upbringing, and your parents would never allow you to use those words. You know, I never would call someone babe, or my mom would have slapped me silly for being disrespectful to a woman. But we can tell shit from Shinola in this country. And to be forced to give up little things in our culture, like calling someone something that's respectful and kind and sweet, giving that sweetness instead of being a hardcore alpha asshole all the time, like some people are that never wave at anybody, never acknowledge anybody's right to exist and drive down the road. You know, that's not the Kentucky that I know. And so people started getting sour on folks that call themselves progressive. And yet it started seeming like all they were worried about was words you use to talk to each other that were benign. Granted, I understand we don't need to call anyone retarded. That's not good. We don't need to put anybody down for their perceived sexual orientation. There's no good reason to do that. Don't need to put anybody down for their race. Yeah, that's not being politically correct. That's just being a human politeness. But we lost the ability to tell the difference. And I think when I look at where we've gotten today in politics, this is where it started to become, okay, I don't want to be politically correct anymore. Now I'm just going to get rid of my empathy. I'm just going to be an asshole and be proud of it. And that wasn't the right way to go either. We have lost our core foundation. Empathy is what makes a country great. Not how many missiles or bombs you've got that you can blast another country to oblivion with. But how much of your time do you spend taking care of your neighbor, making sure that your neighbor doesn't go uncared for and unloved, doesn't go hungry? That's part of that Kentucky kindness and sweetness that I think of when someone would call me hun or honey. That's a person I knew that if I was suffering, they were going to make sure I wouldn't suffer, because anything that's sweet, you don't let it go to rot. And that's how Kentucky values of empathy came across to me. But in our battle to make everyone politically correct, we made it okay to go so far the other direction to say, screw any politeness. We're going to call politeness just something that, if we have to be polite, then that means politically correct. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to rather be an asshole. Now, what did that do to help our nation? Nothing. Then we take that to our national government, our state governments, our city governments. And now it's just, you're not part of my tribe. I'm not going to be nice to you. I'm not going to wave to you. There's parts of Kentucky now where people don't wave at each other as they pass by, drive by each other, or as you drive by, they're staying in their yard. They won't even acknowledge you. That's not the Kentucky I knew. When I go through those parts of Kentucky, I'm like, what happened here? When did you lose just that human kindness and decency that to me is Kentucky? I couldn't find that hardly anywhere else in this nation. And I've lived, like I said, growing up, I lived in quite a few places. But Kentucky always had that thing that made me yearn to go back, made me want to come back to my roots and to love my roots. I'm so happy when I got back to Kentucky because I wanted that, outgoing niceness, ease at making friends, ease of finding people to share a meal with, and joy just to share something simple. Kentucky, we can do better. We can be better. Doesn't matter if you like to have a D by your name, an R by your name, or an I by your name when it comes to talking about politics. Got to get back to decency. And part of that is realizing when decent people say simple things like, hello, hun, have a great day. They actually mean it. They mean something sweet. We don't need to take everything as an affront, everything as, oh, you're sexually harassing. Oh, you're coming on to me. No. Now, again, I don't know. Could be some places where those words mean that, but not here in Kentucky. Now, if someone is calling you babe or doing cat whistles, they didn't have any good raising, and they should be castigated for that. But we've got to get back to where we can just have plain, honest, kind conversations with folks, whether we agree politically or not, or our parties align or not. We still know that we're all Americans. And that's the first thing that should matter. And even if someone is an immigrant, they're here because they know that our country has more to offer than theirs. That's why they're here. You know, we could just treat people with kindness and empathy. If they're here to work hard and they're doing a job like cleaning toilets, which I don't ever want to do, then I shouldn't treat them bad either. You know, when did it become cool to hate the person that does a nasty job you don't want to do? Ah, boy, that's not the way I was raised by my mama. You know, my grandfather worked from being poor kid living in the hollers, dirt poor, literally, to working his way through med school with the help of a doctor in his area that took him under his wing, got any recommendations, and he moved up in life, but he never forgot where he came from. And he always said to me that if a man works hard, doesn't matter if it's mowing lawns, cutting tree limbs down to trim trees, cleaning the toilet, as long as he respected his community, he respected his family, cared for his family, he was honorable and he should be treated as such. He didn't have any favors for people, regardless of what their job was or position was in life, as long as they treated their family well, as long as they treated their community with respect and were an upstanding member in their community. We've got to get back to that. It's not about the R behind your name. It's not about the D beside your name. It's not about the I beside your name. And if you see someone that you know is only in the position they're in because they have one of those letters by their name, but they don't have any empathy, any respect for anything but how much money they can make, how much money they can make sure they never share. That's not the Kentucky that we love. All right, y'all. That's just my thoughts of the day and this beautiful Kentucky day. What reminds me, I love these beautiful, frisky, sunny days. And I love going out and seeing folks that have that kindness in their heart. Want to pass it on, which is a simple acknowledgement, wave and a smile as you go by. Thanks for being here. Thanks for existing. Let's remember, we are our brother, sister. We're sister's keeper. And as folks who love ourselves, we also love our neighbors. Have a great evening.